Right. So for people who aren't familiar with Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was he and what's the film about?
Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a pacifist pastor in the Lutheran Church during Hitler's rise to power in Germany, and he became one of the assassins of the Fuhrer. And in between, he saved thousands of Jewish lives. He was a singular voice early on when Hitler did something that I didn't know about at all until I was researching this movie. And most people in the West didn't know about. Is that the first thing Hitler did when he became chancellor is that he took over the church. Within a year, he had announced that he, Adolf Hitler, was the head of the German church. And he took all the crosses out of the churches and put up swastikas. He removed the Bibles and put in Mein Kampf on the altar. And the German church stood by and let this happen, except for Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Now, you mentioned all this. This was one of the things that surprised me about the film. The facts that came out was when they got rid of the Jewish Bible, replaced Jesus as an Aryan, replaced the Ten Commandments with 12 commandments. Um, when you were doing all your research, what came up that sort of really surprised you, as that did for me when you were putting this together?
I was shocked. I actually held one of these Nazi Bibles. They're very rare, very hard to find. But I held one of them in my hand, and it felt like it was going to burst into flames. I mean, it's just like it's so that level of evil. And it's one thing to say, "Here's the Bible. I reject it." That's fine. But to take the Bible and rewrite it and put yourself at the head of it and put the Aryan race at the head of it. I mean, the audacity. And thank God people like Dietrich spoke up. And this fight was ultimately part of the reason that the world intervened and and saved Europe because Hitler was not going to stop. He wanted the world.
Now, Bonhoeffer wrote extensively. He wrote, he makes this clear at the end of the film that he wrote so much. How much of his works did you refer to and use directly in the script? I'm thinking specifically of there's a sermon partway through the film.
Well, there's a handful of his actual quotes from books, his famous quotes that wound up in the movie. But you can't have a movie whose dialogue is just quotes because it won't ring true. It'll start to feel like poster copy.
Yeah.
So in his dialogue, I just took great pains to honor the man that I had met in the pages of his books. I felt there's a really clear picture that comes out when you read all his work and his letters from prison that an image of a man who was cocky, who was charismatic, who was funny, who was well loved, who really wrestled with his faith and kept exchanging his doubts for better doubts, as an old pastor of mine would say. He wrestled with his relationship with Jesus, he lived it out, and ultimately, that's the call that he answered. He really felt that his mission was to stop Hitler, and that mission was coming from the God he believed in. So that's the guy that I found on his pages. And then the time he lived in, it required one of two reactions, either acquiescence, like the bulk of the German church did, or rebellion and resistance. And so capturing that from the inside out, showing what it looked like and the cost standing up against Hitler was deeply compelling to me as a filmmaker.
Now, the production company that have made the film, have backed the film, they do a lot of theological productions. Is that your background? Do you have a faith yourself?
Well, I'll answer the first question. So Angel didn't back the film. We made the film totally independently, and then Angel bought it, and
Right.
they're the distributor. So they were not involved in the making of the film at all. I am a Christian, but I am very clear about this. This is not a faith-based film. This is a film about a man of faith. So there's a big distinction. In a faith-based film, there tends to be this altar call sensibility where the hero struggles, finds faith, and is redeemed. This is actually the opposite of that. This is about a man profound faith, going deep into the darkness, being shaken to the core by it. And ultimately, it looks like he loses because of the ending. But what we feel when we see the crawl and we understand the impact of Dietrich's life is, in fact, he won. And we are here telling his story, not Hitler's story. So despite the sort of surprising and radical ending of this movie, it's still about a hero who won. And I love that, because sometimes victory looks like a loss before it gets transformed.
Now, you've, as well as having written and produced this, you have directed it yourself also. Now, it's been, I think, about 15 years since you last directed anything, which I think was a short film. So why the wait? Why so long?
Look, it's interesting. The movie that I directed in the early 2000s was a very painful experience. There was a lot of fraud involved, and somebody went to jail. Not me. I was an innocent party, but it hamstrung the movie's release. It was very painful for me, and so that, I think, hamstrung my directing opportunities. But then when Sully came out, because I stood next to Clint Eastwood on the set, the Hollywood cognoscenti suddenly realized, oh yeah, you must be able to direct because you rubbed shoulders with Clint. So then all of a sudden I was getting offers to direct again. And it just so happened that in the midst of all that, I got a chance to write the Bonhoeffer movie. And when I finished writing it, they asked me to direct it. So who knows what unfolds in a life or how or when. I know I'm not in control of that. That's God's timing. But I'm just glad I got to direct this one, because it was such an honor to tell Dietrich's story.
You've written screenplays for what you could call sort of screen hard men, you know, Clint Eastwood, there's Mel Gibson, there's Bruce Willis. And Mel Gibson is, you know, a man of faith himself. Have you kind of found yourself drawn into his orbit of writing stuff for him?
No, the Mel Gibson thing happened. I wrote that script in 1998. And that was when Mel was at the height of his stardom. And I worked very closely with him. He's a creative genius. He's like incredibly smart and creative, and it was great to work with him. But it was long before he started to sort of burn himself down and get into trouble, and his reputation took so many hits. And it's a shame, because he's a massive artist when given the opportunity. But I haven't seen Mel Gibson since 1998. So, but I love that the hard men. I mean, Bruce Willis, God bless him, he's suffering now, and I hate that. But I really enjoyed working with him. And also, Clint is a spectacular human being and not a hard man at all, like truly gentle and kind. And then, it's impossible to not mention Tom Hanks, who was the best experience of my life, and he and I have become friends. He is a special human being.
Now, on a lighter note, and finally, one of the first films, I think it might be the first film you produced, is Christmas favorite, Elf. Everyone loves Elf.
Oh, that's nice.
So what, and because it's become a favorite of so many people, I'm going to ask you, what is your favorite Christmas movie?
It's a Wonderful Life.
Good
In
choice.
fact, It's a Wonderful Life is my favorite movie, period. I think that it executes, and it's ironic because it was in the infancy of the movie business and of talkies. I mean, I think only maybe 18 or 19 years of talkies had existed when they made that movie. But I think it does best what American movies try to do, which are tell a story that is full of surprises, that is deeply human, and that it's impossible not to be moved by. It's funny, it's dramatic, it's unexpected, it's deeply moving, and at the end of it, you're changed. And I think that's what we hope for when we go to the movies. That's what I hope for. That the experience will have altered me in some way. It can be a comedy like Elf, which just brings more cheer into your life. But with a story like Bonhoeffer, I've really seen with audiences that it challenges the way people see the world, and it activates people towards helping others and realizing that we have more power in our hands through love than we do through power, and reminding us that it's available, because there's a lot of people that are interested in using religion as a weapon, and that's turned people off to faith. Many people are disheartened by that, and to see that faith can be a thing of beauty and peace and joy through the life of Dietrich, that's a big part of what's landed on this.